Welcome to the Elaborate Topics podcast, where we focus on lab-specific strategies for medical laboratory professionals. We're proud to be the healthcare detectives that work behind the scenes to get the results needed to influence medical decisions. Let's grow together and jump right into the lab.
Welcome to Elaborate Topics. We are your hosts, Tywauna Wilson, Lona Small, and Stephanie Whitehead. We're so excited to talk about our topic today, which is, should you pursue an advanced degree or certification? Is it necessary? Do you need it to climb the clinical laboratory ladder? So we're going to talk all things medical laboratory in regards to advanced degree or certification. Should you do it? Should you not? Should you invest? Should you not? Is it worth it? Maybe, maybe not. And so when I was doing some research and looking at the common degrees that most administrators are getting, it falls in a few buckets. So you will see that laboratory managers, directors, and above typically have a Master of Business Administration, an MBA. I've seen the MPH, the Master of Public Health. Also seen the MHA, Master of Healthcare Administration, Master of Organizational Leadership are some of the more common ones that I have seen that are universal. I also have seen some of the discipline-specific or specialty degrees. The Master of Clinical Laboratory Science is out there. I've seen laboratorians with the Masters of Education, Masters of Transfusion Medicine and Transplantation, also seen Master of Genetics, Biology, Chemistry. And then once you get to the doctoral level, there are a few doctoral programs in clinical laboratory science. One of the newer programs or more universal programs that I've seen out there is a doctoral degree in business administration. That's a fairly newer one that I have seen. They also have the PhD or doctoral programs in organizational leadership, or other ones that I have seen. I have not seen, for the most part, administrators in the clinical lab moving up to the doctoral level if they're on the administration side. It's not to say that you can't, but that's something we'll talk about today. Are the other co-hosts seeing that in their laboratories? So I think one of the things you have to determine when getting an advanced degree or certification is what value is it going to bring to you and for you. And so I know that my co-hosts have a few other exceptions. They both have advanced certifications in addition to their degrees as well that they will cover. So Stephanie or Lona, I know you have some additional certifications that you've seen out in the laboratory. You want to give the listeners some insight into those.
So for myself, this is Stephanie speaking. Hi to all the listeners. Thank you for joining us again today as we talk about this very relevant topic, especially in our profession where the depth and breadth of what you can do to advance your knowledge and scope and skill set is so rich for all of us in our profession. For me, I've always considered myself a lifetime learner or a forever learner. And so I have always been seeking ways to kind of enrich my resume and what I can offer to the job force, always knowing the difference between a certificate and a certification, right? So I think Tywauna has done a great job of covering all of the advanced degrees that you can receive, and there are a plethora of those. There are also a number of certificates or certifications, and when listeners are kind of trying to decide what to dive into, it's important to know the difference. So a certificate is usually a program where you have to go through an educational process and complete some type of training to show that you have depth and knowledge in that area. So I've done different patient safety trainings. I've done, different quality improvement facilitator training. In all of these things, at the end of that course, you receive a certificate. And these are, I think equally important to add to your resume and to showcase that you have this types of training, especially depending on the skill set and the job and the scope of your position that you have in the laboratory profession. Now, a certificate is going to be a little bit different than a certification, which also requires an educational process, but at the end has an additional requirement of some type of assessment to indicate that you have mastery. And typically that comes with a few extra letters after your name. So I know that Lona has her PMP. If you get certifications in Lean or Six Sigma, you're able to put the letters of the black belt you have behind your name, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, like I said, just because of the roles that I've held in the laboratory, my scope has not just always been technical. It's been, mainly more in management. And so certifications and certificates and advanced degrees that could help me in the areas of process improvement. I did Lean certifications that I thought when I really went into it was just to help me identify, areas where I could improve and eliminate waste in my departments, because that's something that you're continuously doing. The laboratory is not going to be really just running tests all the time. There are so many different facets of what you'll do in your day. So you'll need to have a breadth of depth of knowledge that helps you really start to investigate the different things that you'll be doing your day. My MBA, really I went into that to help me understand different levels of business. And really an MBA is something that's flexible to me across different job fields. And so, if I ever wanted to get out of the laboratory profession, to me the MBA was going to be something that I could carry on and could transition easily to different job forces. But the things I learned in terms of contract negotiations and ways to look for reduced costs have really behooved me and helped me in my role in laboratory. Also, when you're doing things like bringing on a new test and you want to calculate what is the return on investment, the ROI, or create a business plan, those things that I learned when I was getting my MBA have helped me to understand those things. So advanced degrees to me sometimes make your resume obviously stand out above what a bachelor's degree would do alone, but also to me certifications and certificates along the way help demonstrate that you have mastery in certain areas that are important in the laboratory field as you kind of continue to grow. Lona, what is your take on that?
And Lona, you might be on mute if we're not able to hear you.
Yes. So my experience was basically similar. My first graduate degree was an MBA. And I chose an MBA after looking at other options. As I said in a previous episode, I felt stuck. And I wanted to do something else. I wanted to grow. And after excluding med school and biotechnology, I chose MBA. And at first I thought it was business, paper pusher. But then after doing a healthcare MBA, I realized the connection to the lab and how you could use it when it comes to either moving up. For me, it was more about moving up into a different position. But once doing that, I got exposed to Lean and project management, and those were just electives. So doing an MBA kind of opened up this whole window for me, this whole new world for me, and understanding the whole running of the lab, how we run as a lab and how we connect to the other aspect of healthcare. So that kind of exposed me to other areas in which I wanted to learn. So for me, it wasn't so much about what can I put on my resume, but what more could I do, what could I offer, because after the healthcare MBA, I started seeing the connection of the lab with the rest of the health system. And I wanted to do more. I wanted to promote the lab more. And maybe because I was in the midst of other healthcare groups, other physician, nurses, and I realized the value of the lab at the time. And I realized that understanding the whole system thinking was important. So that's when I went into lean. And just going into lean and healthcare quality. So I did a graduate degree in healthcare quality because I thought that was very relevant for us as a lab showing our value in healthcare. And then once working in quality, I find that I was doing a lot of lean projects, and I decided to do my Lean Six Sigma training. And from doing my Lean Six Sigma training, I realized in order to manage these projects, especially if they were like high-level hospital-wide projects, I needed to understand how to manage these projects. And so I decided to do project management. And I realized even doing my project management, it was just as valuable as an MBA. And that certification as a PMP to me was more valuable to me than the MBA. I was just like so gung-ho on getting my PMP because I realized the value that it brought. And that was more about being on your resume, because it's one thing to get trained, and then the other thing is to get that certification to show that you actually mastered the training. You understand what you were trained to do, and you can actually do the work. So getting a PMP, you have to show that you have done a certain amount of projects, you have been successful in these projects before you can even sit for that exam. And so I did my PMP, but then what I realized with a PMP is that it's more project-oriented. So once you're done with that project, you're done. And what I saw that I was doing continuous improvement with projects after project. I would not just do a project and give it over to the project owner. Many of those projects that I was doing in the lab were actually, we owned those projects. So I started looking into business process management, where you actually saw the full process moving from the beginning to the end. You could look at a process from the specimen was collected, from the specimen was ordered, where you're actually dealing with a different process manager, which is the provider, to the time where the result is called or the patient is treated. So you're looking at the whole process, understanding that process, trying to improve on that process, looking at the business aspect of it, the money aspect of it, the type of automation that's probably needed to make it more efficient. So I moved and I did a certificate in business process management. And then I realized that we really need to show our value, so I did a certificate in ROI. So for me, it was more about how could I use those training to help to actually demonstrate the outcomes that I wanted to demonstrate, versus I need these letters behind my name, because quite a few of those trainings that I did, I still did not do a certification exam, but I needed to have that knowledge. So different people basically will choose to do certification based on what they want. Maybe it's more about your resume, maybe it's more about knowledge. It's just for different reasons that we would do these certifications.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. When I think about the reason for me getting an advanced degree and I obtained an MBA, I actually didn't start out thinking, hey, I'm going to get an MBA. When I was an undergrad, my goal was to go to dental school. So I wanted to go to dental school. Unfortunately, I came from a single-parent household, and I started thinking, like, who's going to pay for me to go to dental school? So after I finished with my med tech bachelor's degree program, I started working. And if you are like me and maybe you're different, once you start working full-time and making money and getting in the schedule of working, it's very difficult to try and say, okay, now I'm going to stop working and go back to school full-time. And so I found myself in a position, because even after I started working in the field and I absolutely loved it, I'm like, okay, I'm still teetering with this dental school thing and want to study for the DAT, and I think I'm going to do it, but still figuring out who's going to pay. And so what I decided is that's not something I wanted to do, and the investment that it costs. So I said, what can I do that's going to diversify my skills? And so I chose the MBA because I could continue working and go to school at the same time. And so that's what I did. And after getting the degree, so I'm being very transparent with people here. I got the degree. I had experience in the laboratory. I could not find a job in advanced leadership roles. So sometimes you have to think about the reason for why you are obtaining an advanced degree. Is it personal satisfaction, or is it to climb the ladder? I absolutely agree that it does give you more opportunity to climb the ladder, but sometimes that opportunity is not available at the time. So I want you to be realistic that just because you get an advanced degree or certification doesn't mean right away you're going to get an opportunity. And so it was a year before I was able, and I had interviewed for leadership roles, lead tech roles, supervisor roles during that time of getting the degree. And what happened is here in the Cincinnati area, there was a big boom. One of our hospitals was exploding, and so they needed managers, supervisors, and it wasn't enough talent out there. And so because I was patient and probably because I wasn't getting anything else, I was still looking and found this opportunity. And again, I'm saying this because I had the degree, but I didn't necessarily have the documented experience. So that's another challenge that you might run up to. At the time, I didn't have the documented experience. I had never been a supervisor before. And so it worked out that me and this organization was able to connect. They thought I was a good fit. And so they took a chance on me. I took a chance on them. And that's where I got my first supervisory role, Cincinnati Children's Hospital, one of the best institutions that I've worked for, I have to say. So I was there. I was able to use my degree. I learned so much because then at that point, like many laboratorians who express their frustrations, you're kind of learning on the fly. So you're learning and implementing on the fly. But I have not taken the opportunity to get some of the other certifications, such as the PMP and Six Sigma, just because I didn't feel for me that was going to be of value. I'm about diversity of my skills and in my market. So that's another thing, too. You have to know what your market, your area requires. And so here in the Cincinnati area, having my MBA or an advanced degree was an advantage for me, especially being a diverse candidate at that particular time, 10, 15 years ago. But what I have done and what I would suggest is that you take the opportunity to participate in leadership training programs or other kind of programs. And so I'm like Lona in that I think some of my other programs have benefited me more than my actual degree. The degree got me in the door. It opened up the chance to be able to apply. But some of these other leadership opportunities is what gave me practical hands-on experience. So I completed an 8-week Board of Trustees leadership training program with the local nonprofit, the United Way. That gave me an opportunity to see how community leaders were leading. I completed a year-long program for women leaders, specifically women leaders that are manager level and above. That gave me an opportunity to see how women leaders lead in our community in a variety of sectors. I also completed a year-long leadership program that had community leaders, men and women from all areas, that actually touched on various parts of the community as well. In order to be a good leader, you have to know what's going on inside your environment and outside of your environment. So those are some of the things that I have done that have benefited me, but I will say that you need to know why you want to get an advanced degree or certification. And, of course, I have invested and taken the training in leadership to be a John Maxwell leadership coach. So I teach on leadership, train on leadership, because I know that having a degree is great. You have the book smarts, but we don't always have the people piece or the soft skills piece or the communication piece. So that was my long end of short of getting an advanced degree and having it be worthwhile. But ladies, what do you think? Do you think you would have been able to advance in your career if you didn't have your degrees or certifications, or no?
I think that's a really good question. I don't know. I agree with what you're saying of you have to know where you are, and it's okay not to be exactly where you want to be, but don't waste time while you're trying to figure that out. I think it's a quote by Will Smith that says, it says something, I'll paraphrase because I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, but basically the quote talks about, taking the time right now to prepare for the opportunity, so when the opportunity comes, you're already ready. And I think that's how I've always looked at my ability to continuously learn and put things on my resume and look at my scope. Like, I may not have the management or the director position right now, but when the opportunity comes, I definitely want to be ready. I would say, like you, when I have an MBA and an MPH, actually, a Master's in Public Health, and when I got that MPH, I had already been a director in a smaller laboratory than I'm at right now for a number of years. And I will say for a while I started to feel like I had hit the ceiling of what I could do in the laboratory. Once you implement new instruments and bring on new lab information systems, and by that point I had moved a laboratory, which was, mind-numbing, and I had also built a new laboratory, which I kind of felt like there's nothing else in this field for me to master or to do. And I was trying my hardest to get to the CDC because in my mind that was the next level of what I could do with my background as a clinical laboratory scientist or a medical laboratory scientist. So I was trying my best to get to Atlanta. I was trying my best to get to the CDC and be a public health analyst or be an epidemiologist or, just really work on that civil service government level. And I really thought the MPH would help me get there. And so, and I enjoyed everything, learning about population health and community education and all of those aspects. But, you have a plan for yourself, and then there's a higher plan for yourself, right? And so as I continued to go that route, it really just wasn't working out for me. I tried the Peace Corps, I tried everything, and that really just wasn't the direction that I was intended to go. And so eventually when I got the position that I have now with that MPH, I started to learn that I was able to use many of the things that I learned with that MPH in my role now, because I work at a county hospital in a large city. And so a lot of the things that the MPH covered about protecting and improving the health of the population really deeply wove into laboratories' role in the community, helping physicians make 70% give physicians 70% of the information that they need to medically diagnose and make decisions, and help them make sense of what the laboratory data is. I realized that the two were really playing hand in hand. And I would say right now, as we're going through this COVID-19 crisis, it's even more evident that the MPH has been really helpful to me, especially because all of the work that we are doing for the state of Texas, and contributing laboratory data and seeing how that laboratory data is quickly being able to help us as a city, as a county, as a state, see where we are with our ER visits, with our hospitalization rates, with our mortality rates, with the percent of where this pandemic has spread, and understanding where we are still most vulnerable for this spread. I'm able to see, okay, now there was purpose in me getting that, but not waiting for me to get the position, if that makes sense to our listeners, and then, okay, now I have the position, let me see how I can, add to my knowledge base here, but always continuously trying to improve yourself for the next opportunity. So when you get that next opportunity, you have that in your tool belt. But there's a lot of benefits. We've gone over, I think, really deeply, what the three of us have. And although the three of us are, at our core and at our base and our foundation, laboratory scientists, we've went a lot of similar and different tracks to really just enhance that laboratory knowledge. And the benefits that we see, can be categorized as what do you guys, ladies, think have been your best benefits, the best advantages for these certifications and degrees you have?
So for me, because I wanted to gain more about utility, so most of the certification that I had was more about how can I better serve. So for me, I did a lot of patient safety and quality additional certification on the job, some of them like lean certification and patient safety culture. And I was able to understand to work with other healthcare providers, work with nursing to solve a lot of our healthcare issues that we were having. So not having those training, if, say, for instance, we had a challenge on the unit or there was a challenge in the lab, there's always this tendency to take sides. I'm going to defend my territory versus understanding the whole system of how can I improve any defect on my side or work with another person to improve the defect and contribute in a bigger way to the outcome of the patient. So having that kind of training opened my eyes, helped me to better improve the way we serve as a lab, and also helped me to be able to lead on a lot of these projects, whereas the lab would normally sit back and let them take care of it. It's not our business. I was able to lead in many of those improvement projects and was able to shine that light on the lab and show how we contribute on the whole to patient outcomes. So for me, it was more competence, giving me the tool to do more than just sitting in the lab and running tests.
I agree. I think for me, and this is Tywauna, it actually gave me opportunity to even be able to be considered. I feel and I really believe that if I didn't have an advanced degree, that I wouldn't have even been considered for the roles that I have gotten that have been supervisor, manager, or director, and I've held several director-level roles. Especially being a minority candidate, diverse candidate, I feel like in order for me to even be considered that I had to have at least an advanced degree. And all of the other stuff that I have done have been bonuses to be able to make me more marketable and really for personal satisfaction and fulfillment. I will say that that I would definitely, for the listeners out there who are thinking about, is it beneficial to get a degree or certification, and, how am I going to pay for it, especially if that's a concern and you may or may not have the finance to do so. Most employers do have some sort of tuition reimbursement or assistance, and there are some hidden budget line items for training. You have to be able to tell your story, though. You have to be able to tell the story of why that's going to benefit the organization. So, again, I believe in giving you practical tips that you can use. And so if you are sitting in your laboratory and you're thinking, man, I really want to be able to position myself for the next level, but getting an advanced degree at this time may not be the option. But what Lona was talking about with that project management certification sounds like something that is right up my alley. If you want to see if your employer may consider investing, have your benefits list. How does that benefit the organization for them to invest in that type of certification for you? How can you tie it back to the bottom line of the organization? Or with the Six Sigma, how does that tie back to the organization? What I can tell you is that if you don't ask, you will never receive. And so that's one thing I've learned in my career of being able to ask. Some of these training programs, my employer paid. Some I had to invest in myself. But I would say start with the small things, especially if time might be an issue. And if you are when we think about certifications, and we might have covered this earlier, especially if you are technical and you're in the blood bank, there are certain certifications that's going to be very beneficial to you. So if you're in the blood bank, the SBB, the Specialist in Blood Banking certification, is going to be key for you to be an industry leader in that particular discipline. So think about what benefits it would be for you if you plan to stay in the laboratory, if you want to go outside of the laboratory into the greater landscape of the hospital or into the pharmaceutical or government industry. Think about what would make sense for you, with the outcome of it may not financially pay off or not. Will you still feel like you got value from getting that particular certification or degree? But there are some downsides, so we don't want to sugarcoat it and make it seem like everything is all good with these advanced degrees and certification, and we touched on some of them, but some of them you may not get any additional monies, especially if that's what you're thinking. I'll get a degree, I get additional monies. That don't always correlate. Ladies, what do you think in regards to some of those downsides to getting advanced degrees and certification?
I mean, I definitely think that we have all pretty much done a really good job of displaying, like you said, looking at where you are, understanding what the certification is going to do for you, understanding how the certification is going to allow you to reach the milestones that you want to reach in your life. Many of us have done both. We've specialized in things that we feel like are in our field. We've also expounded ourselves in leadership. Many of the programs that you can look at are sometimes distance learning programs. And so that makes it easier if you have to work certain hours or if you are not flexible and able to go to a class or go to a different city or state and get the education that you desire or want. Many programs have distance learning and online learning opportunities. So the opportunity is definitely out there, like you said, for even if you want to just specialize in an area of the laboratory like the blood bank. I think there's even a phlebotomy through the ASCP, the American Society of Clinical Pathology, certification for phlebotomists and point-of-care techs. The ASCP and the AMT have opportunities for each area of the laboratory, even if it isn't specific to laboratory leadership, which there is a lot out there on leadership, but there is a lot specifically to your specialty in the laboratory. But there are also downsides. And so, the time commitment is one, and also the time commitment in relation to the money you may need to spend. I agree. Many of the people that I've worked for, the organizations I've worked for, have had tuition reimbursement programs and have had continuing education allowances. However, there is still a certain amount that had to come out of my own pocket. And, whether you decide to do that with your own banking or savings account, or whether you decide to take out a loan or student loans for that, is the time commitment and the financial expense commitment going to be worth what you're going to get from that degree? You definitely need to consider what is going to be your personal return on investment for that degree. We can't do everything for the love of money, although there are many studies, and the listeners can look at those, that say that individuals who have an advanced degree over a bachelor's degree alone are more likely to have a higher salary and to be considered for higher level positions. But understand, like Tywauna said in the beginning, that may not be an immediate benefit. And so you may have to wait a while and pay those student loans while you are still working and looking for that higher level position. So sometimes there's not an immediate pay increase, or you don't get to see the immediate return on investment from your time spent and time put into those roles. And, I have a similar experience like Tywauna. After I graduated, it took me some time. I had to really search and look for those opportunities out there, and it wasn't that easy. And so understanding that as a disadvantage, what other disadvantages can you ladies think of?
Yeah, so I agree with you in terms of that immediate maybe promotion that may not be there. It could mean that you would have to leave the more than likely the institution that you're working just to get an opportunity. If you're looking for an opportunity for promotion, you may have to move. For me, because I love to do projects, there have been so many opportunities of, say, director roles that my friends who are directors would call me and say, Lona, there's this director role here in Florida or wherever, but I want to feel as if I'm hands-on. And over the years, I want to be that hands-on person to make that change, to be leading projects. So it all depends on what you want. So you may not get the salary that you want immediately, depending on what degree or certification you may choose. But for me, when I think about that long term, because I've gained so much experience just leading these projects, collaborating, working with different people, that my long-term goal is to do consulting. And so having those experience may not pay off immediately, but using that experience in the long run, you'll actually see the payoff. So that's one of the things that I think of, is that immediate gratification that you may not have. And another thing is, if you don't have the initial experience, like Tywauna was speaking of, like a lot of people immediately out of school may want to go to grad school. For me, it was after years of experience I went to grad school. But when you don't have that experience and you have the degree, it may be very challenging trying to get a leadership job. So I think that's generally the disadvantage, but I think the advantage will be more than the disadvantage, because, say, for instance, at PMP, when you look at a PMP certification and look at what they're paying, your income is sometimes 3 times, 4 times more than what you'd have just having just a regular graduate degree. So eventually it's going to be worth having, whether it's going to be a financial payoff or personal satisfaction payoff.
Absolutely. So I guess as we get ready to wrap up today's session, our roundtable for today, the thought is, what is the decision? Is the decision to acquire advanced degree and certification or no? So for me, I would say absolutely, hands down, you need to acquire something outside of your associate or bachelor's degree of what you already have. So that's the good news, is that as medical laboratory professionals, you already have a strong foundation with your associate or bachelor's degree. So if you have associate, if you're MLT, your next level would be to get your bachelor's degree. Yes, I do think you should attain something further to diversify your skill set so that you can be marketable and set yourself apart. So whether that's a degree at this point, you figure out which one makes the most sense for you, and maybe the degree right now, depending on your situation, may not be the best time. So go with the certification route. Figure out what certification or leadership training program works for you. You have to get that advanced education. And just like Stephanie said, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And right now in the clinical laboratory, we are seeing opportunities come available for those who are ready. So my decision would be yes.
I agree. I think people understand their why, understand the commitment that goes into it, and understanding that if I'm doing this for me, that education is something that nobody can ever take away from you. They can take away your job, they can take away your house, your car, and all the frills, but they can never take away what you have in your head. So it could never hurt you to learn more, because even if your employer decides to furlough you or fire you, or you lose that job or you move to another job, those are skills that nobody can ever take from you. And so, in the end, nothing can hurt. At the end of the day, knowledge and health are wealth. And so the more you know, the more you grow. I'm going to be a PBS commercial right now. And, it just doesn't hurt us to learn and to, like I said in the beginning, be forever learners, be lifetime learners, and to leave this world however you can with more knowledge base, with more growth than what you came here with. So I think if that's it, ladies, does anybody have anything else they want to add before I wrap it up?
Yes. So I would agree with what Stephanie and Tywauna just said. Even if you have to pay it out of pocket, you're investing in yourself. And do your research. Look for programs that are affordable. There's some that's more expensive than others. There's a lot of different lean programs that's out there, a lot of quality programs. If you're interested in project management, there's one that I want to tell you about that's about a third the cost of what I paid. And I just heard about it yesterday from Andy Kaufman, who is this real great, he actually has a podcast also, so you could listen in. It's People and Project Podcast, and he gave me a link in case anyone who are interested in project management who want a very affordable program. It's peopleandprojectspodcast.com, and you can just say /Lona, and that's actually a third of what most of the programs are. You get to do the essentials, the advanced, and they prepare you for exam prep, and you'll be done preparing for your PMP by the end of August. I think they're about to start sometime in July. So, they usually say that leaders are action takers. So if you're interested in doing project management, that's one. I'm giving a plug out to Andy Kaufman's program. But take action and invest in yourself.
Well, thank you to our listeners for tuning in and checking out another episode of Elaborate Topics with your co-host, Tywauna Wilson. Lona Small, and myself, Stephanie Whitehead. If you like what you heard today and you want to listen to our previous shows or just want to get more information about the show, please subscribe at directimpactbroadcasting.com or your favorite podcast platform. Remember to email us at elaboratetopics@directimpactbroadcasting.com to learn more about this topic and others, or to even be a guest on our show. Please tune in next week to hear another amazing episode with Elaborate Topics. And until then, have an amazing day and a great 4th of July weekend.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Elaborate Topics, where your hosts discussed relevant strategies for laboratory professionals. Please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and listen to us on directimpactbroadcasting.com. Stay tuned for another episode with information you can use to excel in your laboratory career.